I stood in the rain at 19 years old with $12 in my pocket, a rusted key to a barn everyone called cursed, and a hole in the floor that had just opened beneath my feet, revealing a steel hatch no one was ever supposed to find. 3 weeks earlier, I got the call that my grandmother had died. I was in my dorm room, halfway through my first semester of college, when my mother's voice came through the phone. Flat, detached, like she was reading from a script.
She's gone.
Funeral's on Saturday. Be there or don't. She hung up before I could say anything. I took a bus home that Friday night. The whole ride, I kept replaying memories. My grandmother raising me after my father left. Her teaching me to bake bread on Sunday mornings. Her sitting with me every night, brushing my hair, telling me stories about her life. She always said the same thing before bed. Remember, sweetheart, the value of a thing isn't what people see. It's what it holds. I thought it was just something grandmothers said. The funeral was small, cold. My mother sat in the front row in a black dress that probably cost more than my tuition. My uncle Gerard sat beside her, checking his phone. I sat 3 rows back, alone. No one acknowledged me. No one hugged me. When it was over, my mother walked past me like I wasn't there. 4 days later, I sat in a lawyer's office that smelled like leather and old money while my future was erased in front of me. The office was downtown, all dark wood and brass fixtures. My mother sat to my left, perfectly composed. Gerard sat to my right, legs crossed, smirking faintly. I sat in the middle, numb. The lawyer was an older man with wire-rimmed glasses. He cleared his throat and opened a folder. This is the last will and testament of Margaret Eleanor Crowley, executed 6 weeks before her passing. 6 weeks. That caught me off guard. My grandmother had been sick for almost a year. Why would she change her will so close to the end? He continued. The estate, valued at approximately $4.2 million, including the primary residence, investment accounts, and all associated assets, is to be divided as follows.
He paused,
Looked directly at my mother. 60% to her daughter, Claire Meredith Crowley. My mother didn't react. 40% to her son, Gerard Lewis Crowley. Gerard smiled. And to her granddaughter, Iris Margaret Crowley. The lawyer slid a single piece of paper across the table. The barn property located at 1477 Old Mill Road. I stared at the deed. It was handwritten,
signed,
notarized. My name was on it in my grandmother's shaky script. That's it, I asked. The lawyer didn't look at me. That's what the will stipulates. What about school? She promised she'd help me with school. My mother finally spoke. Her voice was ice. She changed her mind. That doesn't make sense. She told me 2 months ago. You're an adult now, Iris. You're not owed anything. I turned to the lawyer. Can I contest this?
You can try, he said.
But the will was properly executed, witnessed,
signed in sound mind.
You'd need significant evidence to overturn it. I don't even know where that barn is. Gerard leaned back in his chair, arms folded. It's an hour north, in the woods. Hasn't been used in 30 years. Roof's half collapsed. No utilities. Probably full of rats. He looked at me with something close to pity. You're welcome to it. My mother stood, smoothed her skirt. You have 30 days to move out of the house. My stomach dropped. What? The house was part of the estate. It's ours now. You're not family anymore. You're a tenant. 30 days. I'm your daughter. And you'll be fine. She picked up her purse. Your grandmother left you property. That's more than most people get. She walked out. Gerard followed. The door clicked shut behind them, and I sat there in that silent office, holding a deed to a place I'd never seen, with no money, no plan, and nowhere to go. I tried to stay. I really did. I thought maybe my mother would soften, that she'd see reason. But on day 12, she had the locks changed. I came home from class, and my key didn't work. My things were in boxes on the porch. My phone buzzed. A text from her. You were warned. I spent that night on a friend's couch, then another friend's floor. By the end of the week, I'd run out of people to ask. I withdrew from school, packed everything I owned into 2 duffel bags. and I took a bus north to a place I didn't know, to claim a property no one wanted. The bus dropped me off at a gas station on Route 6. The driver told me Old Mill Road was about 3 miles east through the woods. I walked. It was late September. The air smelled like pine and wet leaves. The sky was gray and low. My bags cut into my shoulders. My feet ached. By the time I saw the barn, I was soaked in sweat and fighting back tears. It looked like something out of a nightmare. The structure was massive but rotting. The red paint had peeled away to bare, graying wood. The roof sagged in the middle like a broken spine. Half the windows were shattered. Weeds and saplings grew up through the foundation. There was a rusted padlock on the double doors, covered in years of grime. I pulled out the key the lawyer had given me. My hands shook as I unlocked it. The padlock fell away, and I pulled the door open. It groaned on broken hinges. Inside was worse. Rotted hay covered the floor in clumps. The smell hit me immediately. Mildew, rust, decay. Broken beams hung from the ceiling. There were holes in the roof. Sunlight filtered through in pale, dusty shafts. The floor was warped, uneven, stained dark in places I didn't want to think about. There was no electricity, no water, no heat. I dropped my bags and sat down on an overturned crate. And I cried. Not quiet tears. I sobbed. Big, shaking, gasping sobs that echoed off the walls. I cried for my grandmother.
For my
mother's cruelty. For the life I'd lost. For the future that felt impossible now. When I finally stopped, it was dark. I spent that first night curled up in the corner, using one duffel bag as a pillow and the other as a blanket. I didn't sleep. I just listened to the wind and the creaking wood and the sounds of animals moving outside. The next morning, I walked into town. It was small. One main street, a diner, a post office, a hardware store, a gas station. People stared as I passed. I didn't know if it was because I looked homeless or because they knew who I was. I went into the hardware store. It smelled like sawdust and oil. An older man stood behind the counter. He had kind eyes, silver hair, and hands that looked like they'd built 1,000 things. "Help you?" he asked. "I need." I didn't even know where to start. A flashlight.
and a tarp.
And maybe some bottled water. He rang it up without a word. When I handed him the $12 I had left, he looked at the total, then at me. "You're living out at the old Crowley barn, aren't you?" I nodded. He was quiet for a moment. Then he reached under the counter and pulled out a box of granola bars, a box of matches, and a battery-powered lantern. He added them to my bag. "You don't have to." "I know." He slid the bag across the counter. "Name's Earl. You need anything, you come find me." I almost cried again. "Thank you." He nodded. Then, quieter. "Your grandmother was a good woman. This town didn't treat her right toward the end. I'm sorry for that." "Why didn't they?" She kept to herself. Wouldn't let anyone near that property. Folks got suspicious. Started telling stories. He met my eyes. But I knew her before all that. She had her reasons. "Do you know what they were?" He shook his head. "She never said. But whatever she was protecting, she thought it was worth dying for." I went back to the barn and started cleaning. I worked from sunrise until I couldn't see anymore. I pulled out rotted beams. I patched the roof with the tarp Earl gave me. I swept out debris until my arms ached. I made a sleeping corner with blankets and the lantern. The work kept me from thinking, kept me from breaking. Days blurred together. I had no phone service out there. No internet. No contact with the outside world. I lived off granola bars and water. I washed in a stream a quarter-mile through the woods. At night, I read by lantern light. Old books I'd found in a wooden chest in the barn's loft. But I started noticing things. Strange things. There were marks on the floor in the southeast corner. Deep scratches. Deliberate. Like something heavy had been dragged repeatedly over the same path. I followed them with my flashlight. They led to a section of wall that sounded hollow when I knocked on it. I kept looking. Near the back of the barn, hidden under decades of dirt and straw, I found an iron ring embedded in the floor. It was old, rusted, but sturdy. I pulled on it. It didn't budge. And then there were the birds.
Crows.
Dozens of them. They gathered on the roof every evening at dusk. They didn't caw. They just sat there, watching. My grandmother used to say crows remembered faces, that they gathered where secrets were kept. I started dreaming about her. Every night, the same dream. She was standing in the barn, pointing at the floor, saying the same words over and over. Dig smart, sweetheart. Dig smart. On my 19th day in the barn, the storm hit. It came out of nowhere. The sky went black in the middle of the afternoon. The wind picked up so fast it rattled the walls. Rain came down in sheets, so heavy I couldn't see 10 feet outside. Thunder cracked like gunfire. I huddled in my corner, wrapped in a blanket, holding the lantern, praying the roof wouldn't collapse. And then I heard it, a deep, groaning crack. The floor buckled. I scrambled back just as a 6-foot section near the center gave way. The board splintered and crashed downward into a black void I didn't know existed. Dust exploded into the air. The noise was deafening. I pressed myself against the wall, heart hammering, waiting for the whole structure to come down. But it didn't. When the dust settled, I crawled forward on my hands and knees. I held the lantern over the edge of the collapsed floor and looked down. There was a room underneath the barn. Not a crawl space, not a cellar. A room.
Clean.
Concrete. And in the center of the broken debris, partially visible through splintered wood, was a steel hatch with a reinforced lock. I didn't move for a long time. I just stared. Then I remembered my grandmother's words. The value of a thing isn't what people see. It's what it holds. I waited until morning. The rain stopped just before dawn. I grabbed my flashlight, climbed down through the broken floor, and stood in front of the hatch. The lock was military grade.
Heavy.
Industrial. There was a keyhole, but I didn't have a key. I ran my fingers over the surface. It was cold.
Smooth.
Untouched by rust despite the decades. I went back to town. Found Earl at the hardware store. I told him everything. He went pale. "You need to be very careful," he said. "Why?" He glanced around. The store was empty. He leaned closer. There were rumors, years ago, about your grandmother, about money that went missing, about people who came asking questions and then stopped coming. What kind of people? Government people, lawyers, investigators.
He paused.
Your grandmother didn't just own that barn, Iris. She guarded it. From who? From your family. He gave me a bolt cutter, a crowbar, a respirator mask. He didn't ask questions. He just told me to call him if I needed help. I went back to the barn, climbed down into the hidden space, and I cut through that lock. It took over an hour. When the lock finally snapped, I pulled the hatch open. Cold air rushed out, stale but clean. There was a ladder leading down into darkness. I climbed. The room at the bottom was nothing like the barn above. It was pristine. The walls were smooth concrete. There were fluorescent lights overhead, still powered by some kind of backup generator. The air was cool and dry, and lining the walls were rows of filing cabinets, plastic storage bins, and a small desk with an old laptop that was still running. I opened the first filing cabinet. Inside were financial documents.
Dozens of them.
Hundreds. Bank statements. Wire transfer records. Offshore account transactions. Shell company filings. All dated over the last 30 years. And on every single one, I saw the same two signatures. My mother's and my Uncle Gerard's. I pulled out another drawer, then another. Loan documents, forged deeds, falsified tax returns, evidence of systematic embezzlement from my grandmother's business accounts. Millions of dollars, siphoned off slowly, carefully over decades. I sat down at the desk. My hands were shaking. I opened one of the plastic bins. Inside were recorded phone conversations on mini cassette tapes. Dozens of them, labeled by date. I found a tape player on the desk and hit play on one from 2 years ago. My mother's voice came through.
Clear. Cold.
She's getting suspicious. Gerard's voice. Then we move faster. What if she changes the will? She won't. She's too weak. And if she tries, we'll handle it. I stopped the tape. My stomach turned. I kept digging. I found medical records. My grandmother's. Highlighted sections showed elevated arsenic levels in her blood work from 18 months ago. A note in her handwriting in the margin. Tested my tea. Positive. They're poisoning me. I couldn't breathe. And then I found the letter. It was in a sealed envelope. My name was written across the front in my grandmother's shaky handwriting. I opened it with trembling hands. My darling Iris, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and they've done exactly what I knew they would. I'm so sorry. I wanted to protect you from this. I wanted to stop them before it got this far. But I ran out of time. Your mother and Gerard have been stealing from me for over 20 years. I didn't see it at first. They were careful. But 5 years ago, I started noticing discrepancies. Missing funds. Forged signatures. I hired a private investigator. He found everything. And when I confronted them, they didn't deny it. They just smiled. 2 years ago, I got sick. I thought it was age. But then I started feeling worse after every meal Claire made for me. I had my tea tested. Arsenic. Small doses.
Slow.
Undetectable unless you're looking for it. I couldn't go to the police. Gerard has connections. Lawyers. Judges. I'd be dead before anything stuck.
So I built this.
A vault. I documented everything. Every crime. Every lie. Every transfer. It's all here. The barn was never worthless, sweetheart. It was a trap. I left it to you because I knew they'd ignore it. I knew they'd think they'd won. And I knew you'd be smart enough to dig. Finish what I started.
Expose them.
Take back what's yours. And remember, the value of a thing isn't what people see. It's what it holds. I love you. Always. Grandma. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it carefully, put it back in the envelope, and climbed out of that room. I walked into town. Found a pay phone outside the gas station. I called the number on the back of a business card Earl had given me weeks ago. It was for a federal fraud hotline. A woman answered. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a pause. Stay where you are, she said. Don't touch anything else. Don't tell anyone. I'm sending a team. Her name was Agent Coffee. She arrived 3 hours later with 2 other agents and a forensic accountant. They went down into the vault. They photographed everything, cataloged every document, copied every file. When they came back up, Coffee looked at me with something close to awe. Your grandmother built a federal case, she said. This is ironclad. Can you arrest them? We can destroy them. She told me to stay away from the barn for a few days. Said it wasn't safe. She put me up in a motel in town and posted an agent outside my door. I didn't argue. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing. Dozens of missed calls. All from my mother. Then a text. We need to talk.
Now.
I didn't respond. An hour later, Earl called me. His voice was tight. Your mother and Gerard just pulled into town.
They're asking about you.
My blood went cold. Where are they? They went to the barn. I called Coffee. She answered immediately. I know. We're already there. I couldn't stay in the motel. I ran. I didn't think. I just ran. I made it to the barn just as my mother's car screeched to a stop in the clearing. She got out first, face twisted in fury. Gerard followed, scanning the area. And then they saw the federal vehicles. 3 black SUVs. Agents everywhere. Coffee standing near the barn entrance. Arms crossed, badge visible. My mother froze. Gerard tried to run. He made it 10 feet before 2 agents tackled him to the ground. My mother just stood there, staring at me. Her face was blank, empty, like she'd finally run out of masks to wear. Coffee walked over to her. Claire Meredith Crowley, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit murder. My mother didn't resist. She didn't speak. She just let them cuff her. But as they led her to the car, she looked at me one last time. You have no idea what you've done, she said. I know exactly what I've done. They took her away. The investigation took months. I testified. So did Earl. So did the forensic accountant. So did the private investigator my grandmother had hired, who'd been waiting years for this moment. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records, recorded conversations, medical proof of arsenic poisoning. My grandmother's letter. Gerard tried to cut a deal. He blamed my mother for everything, said he was coerced.
The jury didn't buy it.
The trial lasted 6 weeks. I sat in the gallery every single day. I watched as they played the recordings, as the accountant walked through the stolen millions, as the toxicologist explained how arsenic works, how it's administered, how it kills. When the verdict came in, I was holding Earl's hand.
Guilty.
On all counts, Gerard got 19 years. My mother got 24. After the sentencing, Coffee walked over to me outside the courthouse. The estate's been frozen pending restitution, she said. But there was another will, filed with a separate attorney 2 months before your grandmother died. The real one. She handed me a folder. I opened it. Everything had been left to me. The house, the accounts, the assets, everything. She knew, Coffee said quietly. She knew what they'd do. So she protected you twice. I sold the house. I couldn't live there. Too many ghosts. But I kept the barn. I rebuilt it, gutted the inside, reinforced the structure, added solar panels, and a clean water system. I turned the vault below into an archive, a place to store my grandmother's memory, her documents, her fight. I planted a garden where the floor had collapsed. Wildflowers, the kind she used to grow. Earl helped. He came by almost every day. We didn't talk much. We just worked. And slowly, the barn became something beautiful. I'm 21 now. I finished my degree online. I started a foundation in my grandmother's name to help victims of elder abuse. I live in the barn. It's quiet, peaceful, safe. Sometimes I go down into the vault and I read her letter again. And I remember what she taught me. The value of a thing isn't what people see. It's what it holds. She held the truth. And she made sure I could finish what she started. If this story moved you, hit like and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below. Have you ever discovered something that changed everything? Thanks for watching.